Yo, I'm riding down the street, got the bass on blast. Car audio enthusiast and first never last. Subwoofers thumping, got the neighborhood jumping. In the world of sound, I'm always pumping. Car audio enthusiast, that's my game. Heated frequencies, no two sound the same. From the highs to the lows, mid-range in between. My car sound system is a music machine.
When it comes to car audio, first thing I'm going to tell you is know what you want. Or you're going to be doing something like this, where you've got big subwoofers in the back, lots of amplifiers, lots of extreme power. Those things are going to require a whole different mindset and a whole different planning system than just putting a few new speakers in your car and maybe a small sub. All that change, talking about doing 8,000 watts of power just for this one amplifier, and that is 800 amps. Which means if you're going to be producing 800 amps of power for your 8,000 watt amplifier, you're going to need to do things like upgrading your alternator, adding extra batteries, lots of big power wires. You've got to be able to move power through that system. Your factory's electrical system is just not capable of doing that. In this case, I got a 370 amp alternator, a 300 amp alternator, big alt gauge wiring, big alt gauge grounds, got 3 batteries under the hood. And keep in mind, my system is not a really big system. Compared to the guys that I run with, I'm actually fairly low down the pole. If you want to run big SPL, you're going to have to spread some money out and hand it out to a lot of people, because there's a lot of stuff that you're going to have to involve in this, and then none of it is cheap. You also have to figure modifications, like these speaker pods from customspeakerpods.com. This makes it possible for me to put 2 6.5-inch drivers in my door, where there would have only been 1 6.5 before. That modification alone makes this door completely changed. If I ever wanted to go back to factory, I'd have to replace the whole door panel. This is a permanent modification. I also had to pack in lots of sound deadener around these to make sure that I'm not getting any unwanted resonances in these doors. That can affect the sound quality and the overall performance of the equipment that you've got installed. And of course, along with the door panels, I ended up using some speaker pods on my A-pillars as well. These are from customspeakerpods.com, and they contain a 3.5-inch and a tweeter. This allows me to have a much higher sound stage and get more sound volume in the front of the vehicle. I've got to be able to compensate and to balance the sound output from the big subwoofers in the back. So more front stage. All of this requires power. And again, permanent modification. I've got to change these completely to a different A-pillar because I have to modify these A-pillars to fit these pods. Does it sound good? Oh yes, it sounds really good. But I understand that you have to make a change that's permanent to make that happen. When you're figuring out equipment and what you're going to need, not everything has to be brand new and the very best of the best. This is an old JL Audio 450/4 that I reconditioned, and I used a truck bed liner to repaint this because it was all messed up. Took it apart, checked the components, put it back together again, and now I've repurposed this 20-plus-year-old mids and highs amp to handle my front stage. It sounds great. Always keep your eye open for anything on Marketplace or on eBay, whatever. If you know what you're looking for, you can find really good equipment that can serve you well and pay a whole lot less for. These 6.5-inch mid-ranges I have in both doors are from Recoil Audio. They have a Q factor that's appropriate for a free air environment, and I'm playing them at a higher frequency, so they're not having to reproduce a lot of bass. But the expense on these things is relatively cheap. I think they were $100 for all 4. Less than $100 for all 4 drivers. So knowing what I want and not paying for what I don't need enables me to spend less money, buy the right equipment for the task, and not be buying stuff that I don't need to get the job done. One of the most common occurrences that comes with this type of hobby is buying equipment that you don't need, or buying equipment that's not as good as what you do need because you couldn't afford to buy the thing you needed, so you bought the next best thing. And then later, finding out it doesn't do the job, so you've got to step up your game and buy the other thing anyway. And now you've spent extra money on the less expensive, not quite good enough thing, and you still bought the thing that was good enough, and you've spent all this extra money. Now you've got extra equipment. Know what you want, and that's important. The planning stage is the most important part of this type of a hobby. If you're going to take on a car audio build, you got to know exactly where you're trying to get to and have a plan to get there. And what I tell everyone is buy once, try once. Buy the equipment that you need and figure out how to afford it. You're going to be better off at the end, and you're going to spend less money in the end if you spend the money on the thing that's doing the job correctly up front. As an example, I know these drivers, these subwoofers will handle 2,000 watts RMS, no problem. And in that knowledge, I know that I need 8,000 watts to give them all the power that I can possibly give them and still have them play nice and clean. So that tells me I need an 8,000 watt amplifier. Well, that's what I got. Now, could I have run those 4 subs on a 2,000 watt amplifier? Sure. And they would work quite nicely and sound just fine. Problem is, I spent a lot of money on those subs to get that power handling capacity to be able to create this much bass. And then I'm going to put an amplifier in there that's 2,000 watts and only create this much bass. Why do that? Well, that led me here. And right now I've got 670 amps of alternator power, and I've got enough battery to help make up the difference. The distribution blocks to be able to handle it, my fusing from a power wires going back, enough power and ground going back to carry that 800 amps of power. Now, in case you're wondering how you get 800 amps of power out of 670 amps of alt, I'll explain that. I actually am a little bit overkill on the power production side of things. Here's how it works. When you're playing a bass track or a rap song or anything that has heavy bass notes, you don't have a constant bass sine wave. So it's not just a constant boom, right? It's boom, space, boom, space, boom, space. And what's happening is, during the booms, you got alternators and battery providing 800 watts. Boom, space. Whenever there's a silent portion, and there's not pulling from this system, the alternators are putting the power back into the battery. So you have a shared hit. Boom, power back in. Boom, power back in. Boom, power back in. Okay? This allows you to be able to play a 8,000 watt amplifier on about 400 amps, about half the power. Because half the time, you're going to be putting power back into the battery. The other half the time, you're going to be pulling power from the alternators and the battery. Now, I know I'm talking about a pretty big system, and you guys may be thinking, I just want to put a few door speakers in and a little amplifier to give me a little bit better sound and make it a little bit louder. Or I just want to put a single subwoofer in the trunk of my car to help fill in that bottom end of my stereo. Or I want to build a sound quality setup. I ain't caring about all these big giant subwoofers and crazy stuff. The thing is, the process is the same no matter what you're doing. Same planning goes in. The same thought process goes in. The same power considerations. The same wiring. The same sound deadening. The same modifications. All of that stuff stays in play no matter which direction you're going. Whether you're doing something simple, like adding a couple of door speakers, or whether you're going something a little more extreme, like this. it really doesn't matter whether you're going with something big like my stereo or something small, like adding a couple of door speakers. The processes are going to be the same. Now, if you're doing a big build where you're going to have big subwoofers in the back, or any subwoofers in the back for that matter, before you put the box in, before you do any of this, you're going to want to pull these panels in here and sound deaden around where the box is going to go. Up on the roof, you're going to want to sound deaden underneath the headliner. You're going to have to pull this panel, to pull these panels, to pull the headliner. All that stuff needs to come down, sound deaden this whole area really good before you go to building. Because after you've got your subwoofer in here and your box in here, you don't want to have to take it back out to sound deaden everything. And if you don't sound deaden everything, you're going to get a whole lot of panel flexing and a whole lot of extra noise coming from back here that you're not going to like your doors. You're going to want to sound deaden them. Before you do all the work, you want this to be solid. While you're sound deadening the back of the vehicle, you're going to also want to run your power wires and your grounds back there, because you're going to have all that trim out of the way, and you're going to want to go ahead and run those wires. Also, if you're considering putting something big back here, you're going to want to have a backup camera. If you don't already have one, you may want to have a camera set up to do rear view, the front. You may also have security system installation that's going to be coming up. While you've got all those panels pulled down and all that space opened up and you're sound deadening everything, consider every wire that you're going to need to run and get those run while you've got everything opened up. Make sure you've got way more power wire than what you're ever going to need. Run. That way you don't have to go back and do it later whenever you inevitably upgrade the system. Before you start pulling panels off doors like these, A-pillars, panels, body panels, stuff on the inside, the interior panels, before you ever start that, go on the internet, find the panel clips that your vehicle needs, and order a 100-count bag of them. Big, huge bag. Order all the panel clips, because you're going to break these things when you pull these panels off. And you're also, even if they don't break, they're going to be weak. And whenever you introduce extra sound into a vehicle, I guarantee you're going to rattle the doors, and they're going to be popping loose, and it's going to drive you crazy. Right off the bat, order a panel toolkit so you can pull panels, and a whole bunch of panel clips, because you're going to need those to keep your door panels on and to keep everything from rattling. When it comes to wire, power distribution, and fuses, don't cheap out. These are the things that keep your vehicle from burning down. And whenever you're asking a component to do a lot of work and to protect you and all the crazy things that you're about to do, you want to make sure that you're using quality equipment. I highly suggest going over to GP Car Audio and getting your fuses there, getting your fuse blocks there, getting your power distribution centers there, because they're made quality, they're made well, they look nice, and you don't have to worry about upgrading them later. They're going to be able to do what you've asked them to do every single time. I can't stress it enough. The bottom end of this system, the foundation, is the sound deadening and the wiring and the power distribution. You get all that done right off the bat up front. That way, as you build up, everything underneath will be solid. You won't have to worry about the foundation being good. It will be rock solid. You can count on it and you can build on it. When you're running those big power wires from the front of the vehicle to the back, you're going to be tempted to come through the firewall and run them down this trim panel like everyone does. If you're running a very small amplifier, like a 500 watt amp, just for a subwoofer in the trunk, that's probably going to be fine. But if you're running more than 1,000 watts, consider going underneath the vehicle. Instead of coming inside, you just go right down on the frame and follow the frame back to where you're going to have your battery in the back or your amplifier in the back, Drill a hole carefully, making sure you're not drilling through the fuel tank, fuel lines, brake lines, electrical wires, or anything like that. And install grommets in the hole and run your power wire up through that hole. The reason I'm saying this is there's only so much stuff you can stick under these trim panels before they start popping off and not wanting to stay attached properly. Also, you're likely going to be running signal wires back there, and you may use this for that. You really don't want your signal wires running alongside your power wires. That can introduce interference. Once you've established your wiring, got your deadener installed, you can start putting your interior back together as needed. Door panels back together with your new speakers installed, sound deadener around them. You can put your back panels back in because you've got all that took care of, and you've got your camera possibly run, security system wires, backup camera wires, all that stuff's already ran, tucked away and secure. You got your sound deadener back here. You got your big power wires and ground wires back here. Put your panels back together, and you can begin the construction process on actually putting the system in. Guys, if you found this helpful and you want a lot more tips and tricks on how to make this happen easily, be sure to hit that subscribe button on my channel, because I'm always posting videos about things like this that'll help you get through the building process and learn little tips and tricks for making the whole system go in easier, last longer, and sound better. Hit the subscribe button and ask me questions in the comments. I answer every single one. Peace.